The thing nobody tells you about secrets is that they don't stay the same size. They start as something you can fold up and tuck into a pocket. An awkward thought, a passing curiosity, a private fantasy you assume will evaporate if you don't give it air. And then one day, you realize it's been slowly expanding for years, quietly taking up space in your chest until you can't breathe all the way in. I'm 24. My girlfriend Maggie and I have been together for 2 years, and it's the kind of relationship that makes other people say, "Oh, you two just make sense." We have routines. Sunday morning coffee runs, her feet finding my calves under the blanket when we watch a show, the way she automatically knows when I'm about to spiral and tosses me a look like, "Come back to me." We're committed. We're monogamous. She's my best friend and my favorite person in the same body. Which is exactly why I thought this thing in me, this curiosity, was a threat, a betrayal, a crack running under the foundation. It's not like I've done anything. I've never touched a guy. I've never kissed a guy. I've never even flirted. There's been no secret hookup, no dating app hidden on my phone, no double life. It's all been inside my head. Sometimes, late at night, my mind wanders in a direction that isn't Maggie. It's a man's hands, a man's voice, a man's closeness. And the thought doesn't just show up like a random intrusive spark. It lights something in me, warm and undeniable. For a long time, I treated it like a bad habit, like something I could starve by never looking directly at it. But my brain doesn't work that way. The more I tried not to think about it, the more my mind circled it, like a tongue poking at a sore tooth. Sometimes I'd see a guy at the gym, broad shoulders, quiet confidence, and my stomach would drop in a way that had nothing to do with envy. Sometimes in movies, a male character would lean close, say something tender, and I'd feel this sharp ache of curiosity, like, what would that feel like for me? And then there was the part I hated admitting even to myself. Sometimes the idea of Maggie and me with another man, an MMF fantasy where everyone is safe, consensual, wanted, would hit that part of my brain like a key sliding into a lock. Not because Maggie wasn't enough. Not because I wanted to replace her. It felt like a different door entirely, one I'd never opened, one I couldn't stop wondering about. That's what made me feel the most guilty. It wasn't just I'm curious about men. It was I'm curious about men while I'm deeply in love with a woman who trusts me. So I did what a lot of people do. I tried to compartmentalize. I told myself fantasies don't matter. That wanting isn't the same as doing. That love is a choice. And I was choosing Maggie every day. But the stress didn't care about my logic. It sat in my throat like a stone. It made me snappier than I wanted to be. It made my stomach churn at random moments. I'd be sitting next to Maggie on the couch while she laughed at something on TV, and my brain would spit out this cruel little sentence. If she knew, she'd leave. That fear became its own kind of obsession. I started reading Maggie's reactions like they were clues. When she mentioned a gay coworker casually, I watched for any hint of discomfort. When a pride flag was on a storefront window, I watched her face. When a celebrity came out, I listened to her tone. She never said anything hateful, never even close. If anything, she was calm and supportive, the way decent people are. Good for them, or that must have been hard, or I'm glad they get to be themselves. But my fear wasn't rational. My fear was older than my rational brain. It was the kind of fear that says, you don't get to want that. The kind of fear that treats curiosity as a crime. For months, I wrestled with the question, do I tell her? Because telling her meant risking the thing I valued most. It meant putting my heart in her hands and saying, here's something messy. Here's something I'm ashamed of. Here's something you didn't sign up for. Not telling her meant living with a secret that was eating me from the inside, growing heavier every time I looked at Maggie and felt like I was holding something back. There was a night that pushed me over the edge, not because something dramatic happened, but because nothing did. We were brushing our teeth side by side. Maggie had one of my old t-shirts on, hair up in a messy bun, her face bare and soft. She caught my eye in the mirror. Foamed toothpaste made her look ridiculous, and she wiggled her eyebrows at me until I laughed. Then she leaned in and kissed my cheek, quick and sweet and routine. And I felt this sudden grief so sharp it almost made me dizzy, because in that moment I realized I want to marry this woman. I want to build a whole life with her, and I can't build it on top of a secret that makes me feel like I'm lying just by existing. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and listened to Maggie breathe beside me. My body felt like it was full of bees. I kept rehearsing sentences in my head, throwing them away, trying again. The words never sounded right. By morning, my decision felt less like bravery and more like surrender. I couldn't keep doing this to myself, and I couldn't keep doing this to her. We planned a normal day. We ran errands. We made lunch. Maggie played music while she cleaned up the kitchen, humming along off-key. I watched her from the doorway like she was a miracle I didn't deserve. My hands were shaking before I even opened my mouth. "Mags," I said, and my voice came out too thin. She turned, dish towel in hand. "Yeah? Can we talk about something?" I tried to sound casual. I failed. My throat tightened. My fingers were trembling so hard I clenched them into fists. Maggie's face changed immediately. She didn't look annoyed or impatient. She looked concerned, alert, like she was tuning into my frequency. "Hey," she said softly, stepping closer. "What's going on?" I stared at the floor. The room felt too bright. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "I'm really scared," I admitted, and the honesty of that sentence made my eyes burn. Maggie didn't ask a dozen questions. She didn't demand an explanation. She just crossed the space between us and wrapped her arms around me like she'd done it 1,000 times. "Hey," she murmured, palm pressed to the back of my head. "It's okay. We're in this together. We will figure out anything that comes our way as a team." Something in me snapped at the kindness. My face crumpled. I started crying immediately. Big, humiliating, unstoppable tears. I couldn't remember the last time I'd cried like that in front of anyone. It felt like my body had been holding it back for years and finally got permission to let go. Maggie held me tighter, rocking slightly. "Justin," she whispered. "Breathe. You're okay." I tried to speak. It came out as a broken laugh that turned into a sob. "I'm sorry," I choked, the reflexive apology spilling out because I didn't know what else to do with all that emotion. "Don't," she said firmly. "Don't apologize for being human." We sat on the couch, Maggie still holding me like I might float away. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My whole body felt cold and hot at the same time. When I finally had enough air, I pulled back just far enough to look at her. Her eyes were steady, not judging, not scared, just present. "Okay," I said, voice wrecked. "Okay, I need to tell you something, and I'm terrified you're going to hate me." Maggie's brows knit, but her voice stayed calm. "I'm not going to hate you." "You don't know what it is," I whispered. "Tell me anyway," she said. I swallowed so hard my throat hurt. "Sometimes I fantasize about being intimate with a man." The words landed in the room like something fragile. I watched her face with hyper-awareness, bracing for disgust, for anger, for the immediate end of everything. Maggie didn't flinch. Her eyes widened slightly, not shocked in a horrified way, more like surprised by how much pain I was carrying. Her mouth parted, then closed. She took a breath. I kept going before fear could steal my voice. "I've never done anything," I rushed. "I've never even come close. It's not like I'm hiding an affair. It's just something in my head. And it's not..." I shook my head, frantic. "It's not something that feels critical to my identity, like I'm trying to tell you I'm a different person. It's more like I would like to try it at least once at some point in my life. And the fact that I want that makes me feel sick, with guilt." Maggie's hand stayed on my arms, anchoring me. I don't want to lose you, I said, voice cracking. I love you. We're committed. We're monogamous. And this secret has been eating me alive. I feel like it's wrong and like it's a slight to you just because it exists. My eyes spilled over again. I scrubbed at my face, embarrassed. And I watch stuff, I admitted, cheeks flaming, by MMF, like erotic videos sometimes. And it turns me on so much. And then afterward, I feel disgusting. Like I'm betraying you. Like I'm broken. Like, if you knew, you'd leave me. I swallowed. My voice got small. I would understand if you don't want to be with me anymore. I couldn't keep lying by omission. When I finished, I felt hollow. Like I'd pulled something vital out of my chest and set it on the table between us. I waited for the verdict. Maggie's eyes were glossy. Then she moved closer and hugged me harder than she ever had, like she was trying to squeeze the shame out of my body through her arms. Justin, she said into my hair, voice fierce and tender at the same time. Oh my God, baby. I went stiff in surprise. She pulled back enough to look at my face. You're not disgusting. You're not broken. And you're not betraying me by having fantasies. I blinked at her like she'd spoken in a language I'd forgotten existed. Maggie cupped my cheeks, thumbs brushing away tears. It is a totally normal thing to be curious, she said. And you telling me, this is you trusting me. That's not a betrayal. That's love. I stared at her, stunned. You're not mad? Maggie's mouth curved into the softest smile. No, I'm sad you've been carrying it alone. I let out a shaky breath. My shoulders dropped like someone had cut strings I didn't realize were pulling me tight. Maggie leaned back slightly, still holding my face like she was making sure I stayed here with her. Also, she said, voice gentler, sexuality can be fluid. Attraction can be messy and layered. It doesn't always fit into neat boxes. I blinked, still waiting for the catch. Maggie continued, almost conversational now, like she was easing me down from a ledge. I don't talk about this a lot, because it's not like my whole identity, but I'm bisexual. I stared. What? She shrugged, a little sheepish. I hooked up with women in college. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't make it a thing. It was just something I wanted to explore. My brain short-circuited. You never told me. I didn't think it mattered, she said honestly. It didn't change who I was, and it didn't feel like a big reveal. I was still trying to catch up. And you know what's messed up? Maggie added, her eyes sharpening with a kind of quiet anger. Women experimenting is treated like it's hot or fun, and men experimenting gets treated like this huge identity-defining thing. Like if a guy even thinks about it, suddenly he's labeled forever. That double standard is garbage. My mouth hung open. My girlfriend, sweet, steady Maggie, was saying the things I'd been too afraid to even think. I can't believe you're saying this, I whispered. Maggie's expression softened again. I'm saying it because it's true, and because I love you. The relief that washed through me was so intense, it made me dizzy. It felt like stepping out of a storm, into a warm room, and realizing you didn't have to keep bracing. I started crying again, but this time the tears felt different, cleaner. I thought you'd break up with me immediately, I admitted, voice shaking. Maggie shook her head emphatically. No, I'm not leaving you because you're a human being with a complicated brain. I laughed through tears, half disbelieving. I love you so much. I love you too, she said, and then she kissed my forehead like it was a promise. In my head, something quiet and absolute clicked into place. I'm going to marry this woman. Not because she was cool about something, not because she was performing openness, but because she met my fear with tenderness and met my shame with respect. She didn't make me smaller. She made me safer. We sat there for a while, my hand in hers, my body slowly unclenching. Maggie kept rubbing circles into my knuckles, grounding me. Finally, she asked, gently, "Can I ask you a question?" I tensed automatically. Then I forced myself to breathe. "Yeah." "What do you want?" she asked, not in a demanding way, but in a curious one. "Not right this second, just in general. What would exploring look like to you?" I swallowed. "I don't know," I admitted. "That's part of why it's been eating me. I want to try it, but I don't want to lose you. And we're monogamous." Maggie nodded. "Okay. First thing, you don't have to decide anything tonight. Second thing, monogamy can be a boundary you keep, or it can be something you renegotiate together, carefully, if you both want that. But it has to be a team decision, not a secret decision." My throat tightened at the word team. "I wouldn't want to do anything behind your back," I said quickly. "I know," she said, and her certainty made me want to cry again. "That's why you told me." I took a breath. "Sometimes I worry it means I'm not enough of something, like I'm failing at being a boyfriend." Maggie's eyes narrowed slightly, like she was ready to fight that thought on my behalf. "Justin, your fantasies don't cancel your love for me. Your curiosity doesn't erase your commitment. You're not failing at anything." I let out a shaky laugh. "You're unreal." Maggie smiled. "I'm just not interested in shaming you." Then she surprised me. "And," she added, a little quieter, "I'm going to be honest. The idea of guys hooking up is kind of hot to me." I froze. "What?" Maggie's cheeks flushed. "I'm not saying that to pressure you. I'm saying it because you looked like you thought you were confessing a crime. And I want you to know my reaction isn't disgust. It's curiosity. Like in a consensual, safe, respectful way." My brain tried to reboot. "You're turned on by it?" Maggie shrugged, eyes bright. "Sometimes. And also, I'm turned on by you being honest with me. I'm turned on by you trusting me." I covered my face with my hands for a second because I didn't know what to do with this much relief and shock at the same time. When I lowered them, Maggie was watching me carefully, still making space for whatever I felt. "I don't know what to say," I admitted. "You don't have to say anything right now," she said. "Just let yourself feel safe." I swallowed, throat thick. "Okay." Maggie leaned in. "Here's what I'm thinking," she said slowly. "You can tell me as much or as little as you want. We can talk about what feels exciting versus what feels scary. We can set boundaries. And if you ever decide you truly want to explore with a guy, I'm open to discussing it." My heart hammered. "Open how?" Maggie held my gaze. "I wouldn't be threatened by you experimenting if it was done with honesty and care. And I think I'd only be comfortable if I could be involved somehow, like watching, or being there, or participating in a way that feels good for both of us. That's my boundary. I'm not saying it has to happen. I'm saying if it ever did, it would have to be something we do together." The emphasis on consent, on boundaries, on together, settled my nervous system like a blanket. I nodded slowly. "That actually makes sense." Maggie smiled, soft. "We can go as slow as you want, and we can also decide, at any point, that the exploration stays in fantasy and conversation. There's no deadline." I stared at her, overwhelmed by how much love could look like this. Steady, brave, unshowy. The whole time I'd been imagining a cliff, and she was building a bridge. "I thought this secret was going to ruin us," I whispered. Maggie squeezed my hand. "It might have," she said honestly, "if you kept it alone until it turned into resentment or distance. But you didn't. You came to me." My eyes stung. I was so scared. "I know," she said, and kissed my knuckles. "I'm proud of you." That word, proud, hit me in the chest. I'd been expecting tolerance at best, judgment at worst. I wasn't prepared for pride, for affection, for my girlfriend to look at my fear and meet it with gentleness instead of suspicion. We talked for a long time after that, not in graphic detail, more in the language of emotions, of what ifs, of boundaries. Maggie asked me what I imagined. I told her what parts felt exciting and what parts felt scary. I admitted the guilt that hit afterward sometimes, the way shame tried to rush in and claim the space. Maggie kept naming the difference between fantasy and action, between curiosity and betrayal, between secrecy and honesty. She kept bringing it back to us, to what we wanted our relationship to be. At one point, she leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "I'm glad you told me. I want to know you." That sentence felt like a warm hand on the part of me that had been starving. The next day, I woke up with a sore throat from crying, but my chest felt lighter than it had in months, like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks, and someone had finally helped me set it down. Maggie made pancakes like it was a normal Saturday. She hummed while she flipped them, hair messy, no makeup, still impossibly beautiful. At one point she glanced at me and smiled. "You okay?" she asked. I laughed softly. "Yeah, I think I am." Maggie's eyes crinkled. "Good, because you looked like you were going to throw up yesterday." "I was," I admitted. She walked over and kissed my cheek. "No throwing up today." We haven't done anything yet. There hasn't been some immediate, dramatic follow-through. No rushed decisions, no chaotic night that rewrites everything. What happened was quieter and somehow bigger. The secret lost its teeth. Now the curiosity isn't a monster under the bed. It's a part of my inner landscape. Something I can talk about with the person I trust most. Something we can hold gently and thoughtfully instead of letting it rot in silence. And Maggie being Maggie, didn't make it something shameful. She didn't treat it like a confession that needed punishment. She treated it like information about me, like a truth she could learn and love. There's a moment I keep replaying, the exact second after I told her, when I expected the room to go cold, and instead she pulled me closer. That moment changed something in my nervous system. It taught my body what my brain had struggled to believe, that love can handle honesty. Sometimes at night now, when we're in bed and the room is dark, Maggie will trace a slow line over my arm and say, "You can tell me anything, you know." And I believe her. Not in an abstract, hopeful way. In a lived, bone-deep way. The fear that I would lose her because I was curious about something, because my desire wasn't neatly packaged, has softened into something else. Gratitude. Awe. A kind of devotion that makes me want to earn her trust every day, not with perfection, but with presence. I don't know exactly what the future holds. Maybe we'll decide to explore in a way that feels safe and consensual for both of us. Maybe we'll keep it as fantasy and conversation and intimacy between us. Maybe I'll learn that the wanting was more about permission than action. Maybe I'll learn something new about myself. I don't need to know the ending yet. What I know is this: I told the truth. Maggie met it with love. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not fighting myself in the dark. I'm holding Maggie's hand in the light. And honestly, that's the hottest, safest, most hopeful thing I've ever felt.